Hello, everyone. Thank you, Mindy and Carmen, for joining us today. I am Lauren. I work with RTSC here at the Federation, along with Cindy, Kendra, and Mary Beth. And we're so happy to have Marcy here today to give the Living in the Gift Empowerment. We're going to go ahead. Both Mindy and Carmen shared their answers in the chat, and we'll be monitoring that throughout the um, networking. We want to thank you for your participation. And I'm going to let Marcy take it over and introduce herself. And we're really happy to have you here today, Marcy. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the opportunity. All right. Okay, so this is Living in the Gift Empowerment for Kids with Special Needs and Circumstances. So what this is a revolutionary, let me just go back, is a revolutionary mindset shift on how we think of healing and success that includes the mind, body, and spirit. So I have been a consultant, teacher, and speaker for over 20 years. You can see my credentials, which I won't go through. Recently, I've been teaching at Stairway to Recovery, which is a recovery center for people with addiction. They also have mental health issues. They also have disabilities. And so weekly, we get together and we just have wonderful conversations about all sorts of stuff. And so it's a really nice time for people to focus on what is important in their lives, the good stuff that's in their lives, and form a community. So today, so if you would not keep your cameras on and turn your phones down or off and really pay attention, because I think that helps me because I love to have participation. And also, I think you'll get more out of it. All right. So today, what we're going to talk about is mindsets and how they govern our lives. I'm going to introduce the living in the spirit, the living in the gift, and sliver thinking concepts. We're going to do a little bit of exercise, and then we're going to look at mindsets around kids with special needs and circumstances. And then lastly, we'll talk about how to implement living in the gift empowerment into your programs. So I'd like to start in the chat. If you would tell me what you think a mindset is. I'll give you a minute to just write. What is a mindset? Okay, good. A way of thinking. What else? How we approach a situation. Yeah. An outlook to life. Yeah. Yeah. All right. For the sake of time, we'll take on. So, okay. So a mindset is an attitude and a set of beliefs that determines how we view the world and ourselves. It has a mind, body, spirit, and environmental component, which is why it's so difficult for us to change them. So, anybody know who this guy is in the corner here? And he's got a mindset on him. What is he thinking? Told you this was going to be really interactive. And you can, it's small enough group so you can unmute and let me know what you think. I'll just go on then, I guess. So this is the guy in The Wizard of Oz, and he has just been shown up. Somebody has finally figured out that he's just a man and he doesn't like it. And mindsets are the same way. They don't really want you to know that they exist. They want to be like the house and you live in the house. So it operates in the background. It is unconscious. It governs everything we do, think, and perceive. And it keeps the world predictable so that we can automate responses. It also acts like a magnet to draw us to experiences and people, experiences and people that share our beliefs. So it helps to shape our future. So one of the fun mindsets I like to talk about is the car mindset. When you get in the car, you have an automatic set of responses or things that you do in order to start the car and get it going. These are part of your mindset. When you get on the road, you already have embedded in you a set of um, rules about how you're going to drive, where you're going to go, all those sorts of things. And you expect the other people that are on the road are going to keep that same driving mindset. So that's an example. If somebody cuts you off or something like that, they're not following the mindset, and you're gonna either, yell at them, honk at them, or something of that nature. So you see that a mindset is incredibly well knitted together to make sure that everybody buys in and operates in accordance with that mindset. So I went to Tunisia many years ago, and the driving mindset there is very, very different. There's no stop signs. There's big open intersections with 5 or 6 cars coming in, and everybody just honks and veers out of the way. So there's just no controls like it is here. So you can see that even different cultures have different driving mindsets. So the mindset is more than just what we think, because the mind, we have our conscious thoughts, and then we have our unconscious mindset. And that's all the governing rules that we've embedded and are no longer unconscious or no longer conscious. So they govern our emotions, our thoughts, our perceptions, and our actions. Our body, which is telepathing roughly 70 to 90% of our communication through biochemistry and muscle patterns. And that's what helps maintain and transmit our mindsets to ourselves and to others. The spirit is our spiritual nature. It's the deep and meaningful connection with self, others, and a benevolent higher power and the greater good. So when you feel like you're part of a team and working together towards a common goal, that's a spiritual element of our naturally that's part of all of us. But these are big concepts, so it's better to break them down into smaller, easier to understand analogies. So here's a pie. It's beautiful. It's just come out of the oven, and it's warm and delicious. And we're all sitting around, and we're all anticipating getting a wonderful piece of pie. And when it gets down, it's being given to everyone, and one person doesn't get a pie. They get a plate with crumbs. Imagine how that person feels. They're like, I'm jealous. They've got pie and I don't. Their goal now is to try and get some pie, and they feel left out, and they're not getting any nourishment. So this feeling of being in the sliver is what we all feel at one time or another. It comes in and out depending on the circumstances. And you folks know yourselves, you can be in a group and feel really part of it, and then you can feel like you're not part of it. So the sliver it sets off a series of negative thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. So that's what the sliver is. So um, uh, we're going to head down the sliver a little bit, okay? Um, so mental illness is on the rise, as we all know. 1 out of 5 young people suffers from some form of diagnosable illness. Now, many of your folks not only might have mental illness, but they're struggling with disabilities, learning disabilities, and often they're in the foster system. So they have compounded challenges for their lives. And so if we can shift this mental illness, if we can give them some positive anchors to hold on to, perhaps we can lower this component of the challenges that they're facing. Any questions? Just unmute if you do.
Marcy, this is Cindy. So
I see.
it's funny because I think you're leaning towards the concept of the fixed pie versus the ever-growing pie. Is that true?
The fixed versus the sliver.
Yeah. Like the fixed pie that people believe that if there's only a set of fixed resources, they need to hoard it or keep as many as they can because there's only so many, versus the concept of the fact that the pie is constantly growing and so there's enough for everyone. And if everyone can just consider the idea that the pie is constantly growing and there's room for all, that then the resources will never diminish.
Yeah, so this is more of an analogy, so it's
Okay.
more a way of thinking. So
Okay.
absolutely. When we live in the sliver, the pie is ever increasing. It's always accommodating new people. So great thought, though. Great. I never thought of that. So thank you so much for that. That's
Oh,
awesome.
great. No worries.
Yeah. Any other thoughts? All right, let's go on then. All right, so when we're in the sliver, which is we're not feeling like we're part of the group, we're not happy with ourselves, we're thinking negatively, all those kinds of things. These are some of the ways that we can think and feel. And as you can see, they not only have thoughts and feelings, but they also are showing it physiologically. So I'd love to know if you have any particular kids that stand out to you that are emulating one of these or other of them, and love to hear your comments. So just unmute.
Hi,
Any
Marcy.
thoughts?
This is Kendra.
Hi, Kendra.
So not as of right now, but I can think like seeing this picture makes me think back to when I used to work with children directly in all age ranges. And like I can see that like in those kids, like having that fear or that confusion and rage or taking on that, they become like that people pleaser from that blame aspect, or the ones that are just so quiet and timid and don't want to say much, so then it's kind of like protect me, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I'm a special ed surrogate parent, and I had a little boy. He was 6 at the time, and he hopped from foster home to foster home, institution. So many of our kids have that. And so they asked me to see him once a week just to give some consistency. And so I would pick him up, and one of the first things that we did was we went to the candy store. We went to 7-Eleven. First of all, he was pretty shocked at how many things were in there. So I knew that the life that he had lived had not been particularly involved in what was happening in other stores. And I said, okay, go ahead and buy some candy. And the first thing he did, and Kendra, this is to your point, he said, oh, so which candy do you like? And he tried to get me to pick it out so that he could say, yeah, I like that candy too, thereby exactly pleasing, proving that he could still be my friend, or that I would still like him. And you can see that mindset is that if I like the same thing as they do, they will like me. And so what I did is I said, well, I like a lot of them. So he would spend 20 minutes week after week picking out the candy. And we would talk about it and all this kind of stuff. And I would just wait patiently. And over time, what he learned is that we each have different tastes and different interests. And so it was a small thing. We were doing something positive, and the result was the healing process that these kids need to go through once they've had pretty much a pretty big shock. So there you go. They're showing it physiologically, they're showing it on their faces, and it's clear that they're in the sliver at that point. So what I'd like you to do is there's certain techniques to get out of the sliver. And most people, or a lot of people often think, well, let's solve the problem and then we'll get out of the sliver. But what I'm suggesting is that we don't. We focus on things that are irrelevant to the problems that the person is facing right there. So what I'd like you to do, and as you know, for many of you in very high stress situations and jobs, you get stressed out, you get burned out, you need a break. And so this also helps us take a break and recharge and refocus our attention. So what I'd like you to do is to sit back in your chair, get yourself comfortable, and scan your body. Look at where you might be tight. And when I'm speaking, I'm often very tight in my chest. And so this is a great opportunity for me to recharge and recenter. So scan your body, notice what's tight, what feels good, and then take a deep breath. And as you exhale, just relax down into the chair and whatever you're on. Just feel that the chair supports us whether we're, no matter what's happening in our brain. It is always there. It's being. So take another deep breath, and as you exhale, just imagine golden liquid pouring down through the top of your head, down through your neck, down through your chest, and breathe into that. And then down through your pelvic area, down through your feet and your legs, and down and out the bottoms of your legs. So you're kind of like a conduit with energy pouring down through you and just filling it with this golden warm liquid. It's just the perfect temperature. It feels wonderful and it feels so refreshing. And then focus on your hands for a moment and see if you can feel what they feel like. It's something that is not as much felt by your prefrontal cortex or your conscious mind, but it's experienced as part of who you are. There's no drama, there's no thoughts, there's no feelings. It's just that sensation. And then take another deep breath. And as you exhale, imagine that golden liquid pouring down all the way through your body and into your feet and pooling down out the bottoms of your feet and into the ground. And then notice what your feet feel like. When kids or anybody have huge amounts of emotions going on, sometimes just feeling their body can get them out of that and give them a foundation that's separate from all the thoughts and feelings. And then imagine that that liquid is now forming roots that are down into the ground. And they make you're a tree now, and you can imagine the wind blowing all over. But because you have these strong, deep roots, you just move with the wind. In fact, it makes you stronger to move with the wind, which is actually true about trees. It's one of the reasons that it's not good to support a tree when it's young, because you want it to get stronger. All right, and come on back. And anybody want to share any thoughts about that exercise?
It was very grounding for me, and I didn't realize I needed it until I did it.
And that probably took us, what, 2 or 3 minutes? Any other thoughts?
It was a good way to check in with my body today. I feel like the past few days have been really busy and I haven't been listening to my body. So I think it was when you said like what feels tight, what feels good. That was like a good scan for me to do personally for my own body. So thank you.
Mindy in
Yeah.
the chat said, Mindy in the chat said it was very relaxing.
Oh, wonderful. That's good. So you can see these mindful minis, these moments of just checking in with your body, taking a moment to notice how you're being supported um, below you and around you, can really kind of reset things. It allows you to recharge and recenter, as you found out. So that is one technique that helps people get out of the sliver. However, if a child or a person has a lot of trauma, they will be unwilling to notice what's happening in their body. And so we need to respect that, because they don't have a foundation in order to open up some of that trauma that's been going on. So the other technique is anchoring. And anchoring is focusing on what's around you. So for me, anchoring is there's a tree, there's some bird feeders, there's my monitor, there's a lamp, there's the door. And by focusing my mind intentionally on things that are completely irrelevant or separate from me, I'm able to kind of like throw anchors to windward. When you sail a boat, you want to anchor it, you throw the anchor into the wind and then drag the boat back to keep it in place. And so these anchors to windward are stopgaps in order to help kids and people get into that gift thinking. So and when I was really depressed, had a really tough time, I would focus on the cars that were going by. What color were they? What was their make? What was their model? And it engaged my mind in positive thoughts enough so that it would get me out of the sliver. Any thoughts, questions? All right, so how did living in the gift start? Well, the picture on the left is what my family looked like. I had 4 kids, and they were constantly telling me that they didn't like what I'd served. They were getting up, they were wiping food on their clothes, they were hitting each other, and it was absolutely miserable. And I was exhausted. And one day I had this epiphany. Now, epiphany can change everything. And here's what happened. I said, I hate my children. And I was a bit aghast that I would feel that way, but it was a true feeling at that moment. And the second thought that followed that was, I'm going to say one nice thing to my children every day. It had been clear that reprimanding them and trying to get them, being the police for them, was not working. So the next day I get up. Now, let me also say that when I would go out with my children, people would say, "Oh, you have such difficult children. God love you." So they were affirming me, but they were also telling me that my children were poorly behaved. The next day, the kids were sitting at the table, and I said to my daughter, uh, I like that shirt. Now, inside, what do you think I'm saying?
I don't like that shirt.
Yes, I don't care about that shirt. It's just a stupid shirt. My gosh. So this whole dialogue's going on in my mind. And my answer to that was, oh, yeah, you're right. It was, yeah, but I said it. So I overrode a very, very strong habit to look for the negative. And I could really see nothing that I liked about my children. So after doing this for a couple of months, and it takes at least 21 days to change a habit, and a habit that deep takes longer. But what happened is it became easier and easier for me to see things that I liked about my children. I began to compliment the positive things that they did, the ways that they helped me. And over 6 months or so, what we would go out and people would say, "Oh, you have such well-behaved children." And we began to work as a team. And so the picture on the right is how it would be. The kids were helping me set the table, cleaning up because they wanted to do something fun. So we had just shifted the focus from what they weren't doing right to what they were doing right and what I loved about them. So this scanning for beauty and positive every day, the positive comments dailies had a profound impact on not only how they felt about themselves, but who they saw themselves to be. And this is really, really true because there are a lot of cultures where the belief is that if you shame them and point out what's wrong, then they'll be better children. And that's not true. That doesn't work that way. So the positive self-talk and doing fun things together were the things that built not only the self-esteem of these children, but also made us feel more like a team and a group. There's a book called 365 Thank Yous. It's a lawyer that was really, really down and out, and he wrote a thank you note every day for a year, and the transformation in his life was truly amazing. I recommend the book. So what happens if we introduce living in the gift to our families, our kids, and ourselves? What would it look like? And so give me some ideas of what you think it would look like in your life or in how kids are treated.
I have a good example from this, my own family from this past weekend. I have two young ones and they were making cupcakes or muffins or something. And I felt as they were rushing and they were just making a mess everywhere. And then like my OCD was just screaming, my body was screaming on the inside. And so I projected and I said, okay, like you guys aren't taking your time, you're messing around, like you're just making a mess. And my daughter got really upset and we had to go in the other room and I had to, hold her, talk to her. We talked about what was going on and we ended up making another batch of muffins. And she was like, I can do this. You just have to let me. Like it is going to be a mess. And I was like, you know what? You're right. Like, how are you supposed to know how to crack an egg if you don't know how to crack an egg? So she cracked about 5 eggs and I just watched them so gently pour over all my kitchen. And, but she did it. Like she did it. And she finally got 2 eggs in the bowl that we were supposed to be making the cupcakes for. And I was like, wow, you did it. She's like, I told you I could, Mom. I told you I could. So it was me changing my stuff going on in my own body and making it positive and really saying like, I'm in my head, I'm saying, it's okay. It's just a mess. I'll clean it. I'll clean it. I'll clean it. But I was worrying about the mess rather than saying like, wow, you're making these cupcakes all by yourself. And that's amazing. Like you're 7 and she turned on the oven. She did it all. She's like, I can read the instructions, Mom. I can do it. I can do it. And she did. And she was like, these are the best cupcakes I think we've ever had. And they were. And so
Yeah.
it was really changing that mindset as me as a parent in that particular moment to make it more successful for my daughter. And she wouldn't allow my son to participate because she could do it all by herself. So then we had to make we had 3 batches of cupcakes on Saturday, guys.
Oh, how wonderful. That's great. And did she help you clean up?
Yeah. Yeah. No, she loves to clean up and they were really good. They're really great kids, but it was just those little moments that you do have to remind yourself from the negative to the positive because we as a family, we really try hard. Every night we sit as a family, we talk about what's one thing you love about each other. What's one thing that made you laugh today about one another. We talk about our highs of our days. We talk about what we can do better from each other. If like, did mommy make you upset? Daddy, like we have those really great family conversations that we take a lot of pride in as a family. So that's really great. And we love doing that. And they now do it when we go out to dinner or when we're at my sister's house or my parents' house. They're like, okay, what is everyone's favorite part of the day? And they'll ask those questions, those positive questions. So it's really great, but it's in those moments that you're just like, okay, change the negative to the positive. It really does change the
Right.
whole experience.
And what I love is because you have those conversations every night, your daughter could, and because you're not the boss, you're not the police,
Yeah.
she could say to you, she could reflect back to you, come on, Mom, let's live in the gift, right? Give me
Yes.
the opportunity, which beautiful, beautiful story.
Thank you. My house was a mess, but yes, it was beautiful.
But but the other thing is that she experienced the joy of doing it, right?
And with
She
me.
experienced, yeah, and that then the joy of having done it,
Mm-hmm.
and she had more energy to make that happen,
She
which
did.
was which is the key. So there have been a lot of studies that joy now and through the process, it floods the brain with dopamine, and so you have more joy, you have increased creativity, increased intelligence, and increased response time. So you're putting all those together in a positive way that can overcome the mess and everything that's happening.
Mm-hmm.
Any other thoughts?
Mindy in the chat said something similar. She said more positive connections and a more strength-based lens, which I love. It's true, right? If you're living in the gift, you do have sort of more strength-based versus a weakness. You're looking at people's strengths. So, and that highlights like your daughter's strengths. So
Yeah, yeah. And I think the other thing is when you go the strength-based route, a lot of the problems just disappear. You don't even have to address them, they just disappear. Your daughter, Lauren, will probably be able to crack an egg for the next 40, 50 years without any problem, right?
I hope so after that.
well, and you know what is even more important, I think. I mean, my children are now in a well, I like to call it transition age, 19 and 23, but some of their greatest memories that they refer back to and some of the greatest moments of their childhood are those simple moments of remembering cooking or learning a new skill or these moments of what maybe in my mind's eye were chaotic or difficult, but were moments for them that were just highlights. And they were probably, now looking back, moments where I sort of just leaned into the chaos and gave them the space that they needed in order to just explore. So you're right. And let them be the kids that they needed to be at that time and supported them through it. So yeah, it's interesting.
And those thoughts, those memories are what can carry the kids through really, really rough times. So that's the value of building that foundation.
I've really seen that in
So
my children's life, actually, through some very difficult times, that they can step outside of the difficulty or the person, especially the person who may be behind some of the difficult times, and say, right now, that person is not living up to what I would have hoped, but in the past they have, and just because they're not who I would want or expect them to be now does not negate who they were before to me or for me, which is, I think, a pretty important skill to have, right? It's the not throwing the baby out with the bathwater necessarily, which I think is so important and goes back to what so many people were saying earlier about what are our greatest opportunities. And I think that's, seeing our differences and being able to see people holistically instead of just for the last thing they did or the last idea they had, but as an entire person. And what we all make mistakes. We all have opportunity to grow and change. So
and
anyway,
what spiritual gift was in operation in that?
I think it's compassion.
Compassion and grace, right?
Grace, yeah.
Saying, you're not really. And so, there's a author called Lisa Miller. She wrote The Spiritual Child, and it's a beautiful book. And basically, she goes through the science behind the importance of having your spiritual nature and developing that. And she said, during adolescence, there's this big growth spurt. And what they don't talk about in a lot of the literature is the spiritual growth spurt, the ability to have differing points of view. And she also says that spiritual nature is something is fully formed by when we come into the world. It's not something that we have to develop and grow into like our physical and our intellectual pieces. So if you boil down all the things that that these experiences that we talked about, and you say, well, what's the spiritual gift that was in action? It really gives you a window as to how strong these spiritual gifts are in the healing process. Any other thoughts?
Marcy.
Hi, Mindy.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Mindy. I'll let you go. And then Carmen said something in the chat.
I think I was just acknowledging Mindy. I don't know. Did you want to say something, Mindy? You're on mute. And we can't read your lips because you've got a mask on. Okay, Lauren, do you want to hear what's in? Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just thinking that this is so important in terms of those of us who work with families to make sure that we are able to give the children that we're working with these positive messages, but also relate it going back to the parent and helping the parent see what I may see positive in the child and the parent may not. And I think that's important. The one thing that this has given to me is that I need to be more positive with the kids that I work with, not just with my family, but with the kids that I work with, because they coming in with a lot of challenges. And as you say, we're able to react to them differently, then they will be able to begin to act better, in our after school program, and they will pass it on to the parents. That's how I beginning to see this, not just to relating it to our families and what we need to do, but relating it to those families that we're working with. And how do we give those thoughts that you're bringing up today to the families? And that's what I'm taking out of this is, how can I live alone, my kids are grown, how can I help the families? And it's for me to see much more positive, like if a kid is running around in the classroom, and in not just saying to them, stop, 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 which is what I usually say. What I'm trying to think is, I would have to say, hey, Joe, come here, come to me, and let's walk around the place rather than having them running around in terms of the classroom. So this is what's helping me to see how I'm going to react to families, since I live alone and don't have much family.
Yeah, I think so. And there's the concept is so simple and so easy to implement that it's something to tell the families. You have a teacher conference. Explain the concept, explain what you're trying to do, explain how they can help. Because I think, it if you commit to it. So the second part of the story is that I was at a church retreat, and there was this woman that was crying the entire weekend, and she was trying to decide whether to divorce her husband or stay married. And at the end, I said, you're really at a crossroads. So I didn't get involved in trying to help her or give her advice. I basically stepped and I said, you're at a crossroads. You can look at the negative and you will be getting divorced, or you can look at the positive and who knows what's going to happen. So I didn't promise anything, just said, who knows, but good things could happen. 2 years later, I'm at this same retreat, and there's this woman, and she's talking about how amazing her husband is, that the daughter and the husband do music together. And I'm like, wow, I wish I had a family life like that. So she was more positive than I was. And so at the end of the retreat, she says, Marcy pulled me aside and she explained that I was at a crossroads. And negative or positive. And I took this home to my husband, and they actually created the whole living in the gift, living in the sliver. And they made an agreement that if anybody started living in the sliver, which was happening all the time, and which was the culture of the father, they could say to the other person, are you living in the sliver? They didn't reprimand them, they didn't tell them, they asked them. And it's giving choice. And the other person would say, yeah, and then they would turn it around. So this completely transformed their family. The husband's mother, who was very negative and critical, also bought into it. And, she did pass away, but on her tombstone is living in the gift. And so the power is incredible just from this very simple analogy. So Carmen,
Thank you.
you use it with yourself too. I think the other thing is that I was extraordinarily negative with myself. I was a big bully. And after doing this with my kids, I found myself being kinder to myself. So looking in the mirror in the morning and saying 3 positive things about you will sort of seep into who you are and everything around you. And this will come out of your mouth naturally.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so this strong positive foundation. Now, notice that these are spiritual gifts. They hope, determination, engagement, enthusiasm, compassion. They are the things that are really going to be healing. It's not as much the advice and the help, although that will come along, but along with these spiritual gifts. That's what's going to give them the foundation and the courage to take these leaps of faith. I mean, Lauren, you're all the things that you do at the dinner table with your kids. It gave them the foundation to say, I'm willing to break a whole bunch of eggs so that I can get it right. That's it. Okay, so what do kids need to thrive? So they need safety. They need to be unique and valued. And the only way you can find out how they're unique and valued is to see them, to take the time to see what you love about them and what is lovable and what's unique about them. And with that, what that does is it creates a community that loves and supports them. So they feel like they're belonging. Even if they are autistic or have major problems, it's that community love and support and seeing through their disabilities and their problems to who they are. There's an organization here called can't remember. Anyway, they have severely handicapped kids and adults, and their focus is on the kids and their personalities and what they like and what, laughter and bringing them joy. It's truly an amazing and magical place because of that. They need the opportunity to explore, lead, and create and formulate who they're going to be in their future. So Lisa Miller talks about the quest, and that often happens in tweens and adolescents, and that's where they need to discover and reflect on who they are, what they like, what do they enjoy, who are my friends, what do I love about them, and you can see that if you're getting into this the adolescent clickiness, that if you shift that to what do I love about them instead of what do I hate about those people, it's fundamentally brings people together. They also need to learn how they're going to fit into society and what's their calling and their purpose. So when I teach, I use the Socratic method, and you guys have seen that in this class where I'm asking questions and I'm listening to the answer. And you see, Lauren provided an example that was beneficial to everyone. I couldn't have said it better. And so by having the people in the classroom or the people that you're working with give you the answer, it number one puts them in a feeling of that they have value and that they're in authority in something. It also helps them share with each other. It builds community. And it's really amazing to see what's happened at the Stairway to Recovery in that we talk about what's great about you. And when I ask this question, most people say, well, nothing. And so then the people in the community start reflecting back what they love about that person. It's very powerful. It's a very powerful way to build that foundation of positive. When a student, when you're teaching or with your kids and somebody makes a negative remark like, well, I'm nothing, you can ask them, don't say, yes, you are, because they're not going to believe it. They've already committed to this mindset, but ask them if it's a negative comment or a sliver thought or a gift. That way they can reflect, they can make the decision. And you want your kids to understand the living in the gift concept. And then that's their framework that helps them understand where they want to live. Do they want to live in the gift or they want to live in the sliver? And how do you get out of the sliver when you're in it? So, and one of the things that happens is that self-consciousness fades. They're more willing to be themselves. And that also further strengthens the community. How am I doing on time? Oh, I got 5 minutes. So basically, I start out with the pie analogy when I'm teaching. I draw a circle with a sliver in it, and I ask them to fill it in. And then, and what that does is it gives them a practical idea that they created to help them understand the concept. And then we talk about how we can help each other to live in the gift. So here are some positive habits. Scanning the world and yourself, the world, and others for what's positive, gratitude for 3 things, journaling about one positive event each day. I generally speak it into my phone and email it to myself. The exercises and the mindful minis. We did this in 1 to 2 minutes. You have 1 to 2 minutes every hour to do one of these things, and you're going to come out of your day's work not as spent as you would if you hadn't done this. Random acts of kindness, encouraging children to do random acts of kindness is such a boost to their self-esteem and who they are. And finding joy in the moment. And I think I mentioned that the dopamine floods your brain and it makes you smarter, creative, more successful. It's a great thing. And so this is, I've really got, let me just stop right here. You can read that, but any thoughts or any questions?
I just wanted to say thank you for this, Marcy, because it's really bringing to light, like you said, the moments of joy. Like I just keep thinking back to the fact that um me and my mom, we started Lent, so she stopped watching the normal movies she would watch, and I was able to convince my parents to start watching Korean dramas. And then no, the night before we started watching them together, and my mom called me at work today and was like, "What's the show we're watching together? I'm trying to tell my coworker." So it has now become a regular thing that me and my parents spend time, like an hour a night, to watch this show together, which hasn't been happening for a while.
That's awesome. And what an opportunity to share experiences that you've had in the past that were positive. Even with kids that have experienced a lot of abuse, there are still positive moments in there. And to bring those out is very healing and wonderful. That's wonderful, Kendra.
Thank you.
I love this. Thank you so much, Marcy. And just so you know, Mindy just wanted to say thank you so much. She loved this. And I agree. It reflects a lot of the things that I've been doing or trying to do in my life in general. But one thing that